Hi guys, and welcome to another video lesson. Today we're going to be taking a look at a different subdivision in our grooves. Before we get started, a quick recap on what we mean by subdivision. Subdivision means breaking something down into smaller parts. An example that you've come across in the real world, as it were, would be money. So there's lots of different ways you can make a pound. You can have £1 coin, two 50p's, 10 10-pence pieces, and so on. Those are all subdivisions, a £1 subdivision. So when we talk about a one beat subdivision, it's all the different ways we can split one beat up. So 2 quavers, 4 semiquavers, 3 quaver triplets, and so on. Today we're going to be looking at the subdivision 1E and, so 2 semiquavers followed by a quaver, or if you prefer, 2 16th notes followed by an 8th note. As we already know, grooves take their name from what we're doing on the cymbal. So we're going to put that new subdivision 1E and on the cymbal to change our groove. So let's start by playing just 1E and, the new subdivision, on the hi-hat cymbal. Now you might find that this is quite a bit of work for your lead hand. It's more than we're used to doing. Try and keep the stick as relaxed and as loose in the grip as you possibly can, and try to get the bounce to do as much of the work for you. So rather than muscling it out, as it were, doing it all with the wrist, certainly don't do it with the elbow like I'm doing there. Try and get the bounce to do more of the work. Stay nice and relaxed and start slowly and build up. I'm going to be doing this at 70 beats per minute, but as we've said plenty of times already in these lessons, if you need to slow it down and build up to that speed, that's fine. I'm playing it at the target tempo. You do not have to start there. Okay, so let's add the bass drum and the snare drum in. Bass on 1 and 3, snare on 2 and 4. Be careful when you're playing this not to swing the pattern. So 1E and is played like this, 1E and, 2E and, 3E and, 4E and. What we don't want, 1E and, 2E and, 3E and, 4E and. That's quite an extreme example of swinging it. You might have somewhere in between those two extremes. We want it dead straight. 1E and, 2E and, 3E and, 4E and. Here we go at 70 beats per minute. Just as with any other groove that we've learned, we can add variations to it by changing the bass drum and the snare drum pattern. So I'm going to put a bass drum on 3 and. Now what that means when we get to beat 3 is we're going to have a bass and a hi-hat together, hi-hat on its own, then a bass and a hi-hat together again. So both, right, both. Left is, it would be both, left, both. We've talked about this kind of hybrid counting before, counting sticking and note values. If it helps you, great, use it. If it doesn't help, don't worry. Just carry on with the usual 1E and 2E and, that's fine. What we want is these bass drums and hi-hats to come down at exactly the same time. Here we go. Before we go any further, pause the video and try creating your own grooves with this new 1E and subdivision on the hi-hat. I've changed the bass drum in that previous example, I've added it to 3 and. What happens if you put the bass drum somewhere else? What happens if you change the snare drum pattern? You know the drill, you get the idea. See how many different variations you can create. Then come back and join me to finish off the lesson. How did you get on? Hopefully you've got a few new grooves now that you can add to your repertoire and your playing. Let's try another example. We're going to move the pattern over to the ride cymbal. Now, instead of just playing one E and on the bow of the ride cymbal, we're going to play the last note, the and, on the bell. So we're going to be using the tip of the stick on the bow of the cymbal. The bow, remember, is the bit in between the bell in the middle and the edge, on the edge. We're going to be using our tip of the stick on the bow of the cymbal for the one E, and then coming up and hitting the bell with the shoulder of the stick, so the bit where it starts to fatten out, on the and. So we're going to have 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and. I'll keep the bass on 1 and 3 and the snare on 2 and 4. No nasty extra bass drums or snare drums in this one. Just as with the previous examples on the hi-hat, we can vary this ride cymbal version of the groove by changing the bass and snare drum pattern. So I'm going to put that bass drum back on 3 and from earlier. Here we go. So there you go, 1 E and on the hi-hat and or the ride cymbal. As I said earlier, there are so many different combinations and groove possibilities here. Don't just use the ones from today's lesson. Once you've got the hang of these, experiment. See which different versions of this idea you can come up with and use in your own playing. That's it for today's lesson, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you've got any questions, please feel free to get in touch. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment down below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Take care, stay safe, and enjoy your drumming, guys.